regular meeting for Thursday, September 21st, 2017 has now been called to order. We will have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Father God, we just love you. We thank you for this day. Just thank you for all your many blessings that you lay upon each and every one of our lives, Father. Just pray that you give us wisdom and discernment tonight over the decisions we make and that they please you, Father. We ask all these things in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have roll call, Madam Secretary?
Yes, sir. Mr. Abshire?
Here.
Mr. Enderhart?
Here.
Mr. Barris?
Here.
Vice President Brame? Mr. President?
Be you, bud.
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Foreman?
Here.
Mr. Guillory?
Here.
Mr. Landry?
Here.
Mr. LaTour?
Here.
Ms. Mayo? Mr. McMillan was unable to attend due to work obligations. Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mrs. Tree?
Here.
Mr. White was also unable to attend due to work obligations. And President Guidry?
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. Just a few housekeeping items. For those of you that have pagers, cell phones, we'd ask that you would put those devices to silent so that we can conduct our meeting on tonight. And also, if there's any item on tonight's agenda that anyone would like to speak on, we'd ask you would fill out one of the blue cards that's in the rear of the room. And we'd ask you would bring those cards to either Ms. Jessica or Ms. Kathy so that we can make sure and put you on the agenda for tonight. With that being said, we'll go ahead and move to item number 4. Presentation from the Louisiana Taxpayers Protection Political Action Committee on Constitutional Amendment Number 1 that is being proposed statewide on October 14, 2017 election ballot. At this time, I would call on Mr. Chris John. Would you please come to the podium, please, and state your name and address for the record, sir?
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Chris John. It's 730 North Boulevard in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I'm president of Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association and also on the board of directors of Louisiana Taxpayers PAC, of which I'm representing today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the council and discuss a very important issue. I guarantee you I will not be long in looking at your agenda. Being on the former city council in Crowley, these zoning issues may take a while, so I'll be very brief. But in all seriousness, Amendment Number 1 is an extremely important amendment. It is an amendment that simply is going to prohibit the taxation of construction projects while they're in progress. It has been the practice of the state of Louisiana where while you're building your home, a small business, or a large chemical facility, that those businesses were not assessed property taxes until they were completed and for their purpose. Whether if you're building a home, during the process of building the home, you weren't on the tax rolls, but when you moved into your home, then you were put on the rolls. And that has been the practice ever since day one here in the state of Louisiana. What has happened is there are a couple of assessors in Louisiana that have challenged this agreement. And again, I think it puts industry at risk. I think it sends an extremely negative message to industry that we're not welcoming them during the time of when they're actually building the buildings. And of course, that goes for also homeowners. So what the amendment is, only the amendment, it's very simple. The amendment is going to actually put in the Constitution. You may ask, why do we need a constitutional amendment? Well, because it's silent and the statutes out there leave it for an interpretation, then I think that what's at risk, the billions of dollars that are at risk today, I think it warrants a constitutional amendment. So the legislature passed Senate Bill 140 last year that put this amendment on the ballot. If passed October the 14th, it will put in the Constitution and clearly define that construction while in progress, and of course in government we all have acronyms, CWIP, we call it CWIP. You'll see a lot of that in the coming days during a statewide campaign. it will put in the Constitution that until a project, a construction project, is completed, that we're going to honor the practice in the past and not put it on the rolls. This is a statewide referendum, which is really going to be very challenging because there's one statewide elected official, statewide race across the state, so there's going to be probably a very low turnout. But again, what's at risk for the industries here in Calcasieu Parish is tremendous. It's in the billions of dollars, to be real honest with you, because if an assessor can go back 3 years to some of the chemical facilities here or homes being built or what's going on in Calcasieu Parish over the last 3 years, I think that's going to send really the wrong messages. We have an array, an impressive array of people that have endorsed this from around the state. If you'd bear with me, I just want to read about 7 or 8 of them. The Southwest Louisiana Chamber of Commerce, I know many of you guys know them. The Alliance for Positive Growth, the Louisiana Police Jury Association, the Louisiana Home Builders Association, the Louisiana Association of General Contractors, the Louisiana Chemical Association, Mid-Continent Oil and Gas, of whom I'm representing today, Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, LAB, has also endorsed it. These are people that are not just supporting it, they have publicly endorsed it, and they're a part of the statewide campaign. So with that, I'm here only as a means of discussion to bring it to your attention, because I do think that it's extremely important, given all of the capital investments that have been announced in this side of the state, in the southwest corner of the state. So I'll be glad, Mr. President, to answer any questions that you may have, but we're going to be actively going out supporting this amendment all around the state because it is very important. There's a lot at risk here.
Chris, we thank you for your time and your presentation. We do have a few jurors that would like to make a few comments, and I'll start with Mr. Andrew Point.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chris, first of all, we go back a long way, don't we?
Yes, sir, we do. A long way.
Thank you for being here tonight, number one. Secondly, our meetings are televised, and so this message will not only go out to the homes that view our meetings and give them a heads up of what's fixing to come down. We are Petrochem Parish, and we would definitely be affected by if this does not pass. So thank you for what you did. I know you worked hard on this amendment, and appreciate your time, and appreciate you being here tonight. I think all of us in here I speak for, and good seeing you again.
Thank you, Joe. Andrew Pont, we really appreciate it, and
Francis,
not only
Francis
or
is the
Francis.
name. Joe's my wife's
yeah.
oldest son.
Thank you, Francis. I appreciate those comments, and remember that this doesn't just apply to industry.
Yeah.
This could apply to your small business. If you're building a small business and you, at the first of the year, have a slab with some 2x4s or halfway built structure, you could be assessed before you actually start to occupy and actually run your business out of it. So it's something that I think is needed, and it does not take any new taxes. In fact, the jingle, if you may, about it is vote yes on number 1 for no new taxes.
Yeah.
That's what
Well,
it's
Joe
all
had
about.
given me a heads up a while back that you were working on that amendment, and I do, again, appreciate it. I don't want to sound redundant, but I do appreciate you being here. Mr. President, I yield
Thanks,
back.
Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. Mr. Barris.
I did not ask to speak, but I appreciate you coming. And,
I'm only going off what my vice president
Hello.
tells me.
Hey, a public official not wanting to speak into the mic, really? No, I'm just kidding. Juror Barris.
How is it?
All right. I'll call on Mr. Forner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know we're kind of similar looking. Maybe not. Maybe I wish. Thanks for being here tonight. I guess up till now, like a home, you never paid tax on it until closing date came along, and there's people that are challenging that,
Yes.
even at the homeowner level.
No, the case that is in court today is only on a facility to the south of here, that there's a challenge, and there's actually a court case.
Okay.
Not a court case. There is a suit that's being filed, and it is making its way through the courts. But again, what's at stake here, I don't want to leave to the interpretation of a judge and maybe a jury. when it's very clear that we have done this for hundreds of years, and we don't want to change the way we're doing that.
So this will absolutely clear it up all the way from a homeowner to a small business to the very largest industry that we can imagine.
It'll be hard-coded in the Louisiana Constitution. It'll be crystal clear. That's why we took this route.
What is maybe elaborate on a little bit about what is the trigger date for an industry? Because they reach a lot of milestones along the progress of a project like that. Is it mechanical completion? Is it beneficial operation? What is that trigger, or do you know?
The way I understand it, and I may not understand it quite all the way through, but the way I understand it is for its intended purpose, at the time it's of its intended purpose. So let's take, for example, that it's an LNG facility. Well, if your intended purpose is to make liquefied natural gas, when you start doing that, you may not be complete on your plant, you may be building another train or something, but when you start with your intended purpose, that's what triggers for it to go on the tax rolls. A home, once you move into your home at closing, that's what would trigger that. Small business, once you get up and going and start to open your doors for business, I think that would be the trigger in that case.
Yeah, in the industry, I've spent 42 years in the industry, and so it sounds like beneficial operation, and they have to start making a product that they actually can market. Right. And so it sounds like a good trigger date, and that would put a significant pop to some of these industries that take 4 or 5 years to build that and actually start making money off of it.
Absolutely. That's why I'm here today. That's why I'm going around the state, because I didn't know what CWIP was 4 or 5 months ago and during the legislature. And as I started to learn, and my members, who I represent, all of the integrated oil and gas companies, I represent all the refineries and pipelines and LNG facilities, it came to fruition very quickly that what's at stake here is tremendous. It's in the billions of dollars. If they were allowed to go back 3 years and assess property, even if you weren't producing your liquefied natural gas or anything, so there's a lot at stake here.
Well, thanks again for being here, and we appreciate all the information. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Ms. Trimmy.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Anderpont and also Mr. Fornham. They asked all the right questions. So I'm just going to say thank you for coming. You answered all of our questions. We will actually try to get out and support this openly. And would you please tell Peyton and the boys hi for me?
Well, Peyton is actually in the audience. If
Where
you
is
look out
she?
there, she will wave to you, I'm sure.
She looks wonderful.
Mr. Anderpont, we go back, but Sandy
We go
and
way
I
back.
have some serious connections. His brother, who is now the clerk of court, worked for me for my congressional office for
Many years.
my entire term.
Yes.
My entire term. So,
And that's also at the victory party in Crowley, where Lynn got on his knees.
yes.
And asked his
it
wife to
proposed to his
marry
wife.
him.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Really?
So it was a memorable night.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm just saying. I'm going to go say hi to
Thank you,
Peyton.
Miss Sandy.
Y'all have to excuse me for a minute.
You go right ahead, Ms. Trimmy.
You're going anyway.
Mr. Scott.
I don't think we're going to support this as much as make sure people are informed. I don't think we could actually support a way of a vote. Am I correct, Mr. Gabb? I mean, we can,
Individually, but not.
Well, right now, it's
Yeah.
not on the agenda to
Yeah.
take any action. It's
This
just a
is an awareness.
presentation.
but we're glad people are informed.
Yeah.
If it's all right, I want to nitpick just for a second.
Sure.
You know, you mentioned the word could several times in there. Your house could, your house could. Is there a defining mark in this legislation that, I mean, is it really that drastic to where it's going to be my barn compared to a huge LNG facility?
The way I understand it, that uniformity, that word uniformity is throughout the statute and also in the Constitution. So fears, and again, I'm not an attorney, but they have advised me that if this bill does not pass and one assessor in the state decides to put it on the rolls, then that will come into question that some assessors across the state that don't want to do this may have to do it, just because of uniformity. And I think you'll get into a mess, in a legal mess to be able to deal with that. It could. What I meant by could, meaning it would be up to the assessor, but that assessor's hands may be tied if the uniformity argument comes into play down the road. Because there are many assessors that don't want to do this. There are some that do. But again, that's what makes it, I think the uncertainty out there, I think makes our guys a little nervous. So this is our attempt. And again, I'm not asking for an endorsement or a resolution. I'm here only as really to inform the jury of this amendment.
All right, and what about the, the question's been asked, which is why this amendment is even on there. A project that started off with 3 to 4 years should be up and running now, pushes into adding a little more and is going into 7 years or 8 years. So it's not on the tax rolls yet. So can you speak to that actual discussion, which is, in what I believe is why this is in there? This is the discussion that got us here.
The only way that I could really respond to that is I don't believe that a legitimate business would stagger their completion to be able to do whatever they're going to do to sell their product to just stay off the tax rolls. I really don't believe that. Now, could they? Maybe they could. But again, as soon as they get to a point where they're actually operating of what they intended to do or making a product, then at that point in time, they go on the tax rolls. But I would think that economically it would not be beneficial to drag it along for that reason. In fact, if you were trying to get to where you're going to make things, because you're spending a lot of your capital and you want to start to actually sell your product and be able to make some income on it.
All right, well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming up. I would hope people go out and dig for the information they need to make sure they make an informed vote. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And the jurors. Chris, we thank you for your time and do appreciate you coming before us and giving us that information.
Thank you, guys,
Thank you so much,
and
Chris.
good luck. I appreciate
Also,
you.
I would like to recognize one of our former jurors that's in the audience. It's Mr. Mike Danahy, who's now one of our state reps in Baton Rouge. We want to thank you for being here tonight. Good to see you. Moving on to item number 5. Take appropriate action on applications for liquor and beer permit. Mr. Crane.
Mr. President, we have 4 applications before you tonight. Recommend they be approved.
I have a motion by Mr. Guillory and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number 6.
Move on 6.
Consideration of approving payments of all current invoices. I have a motion by Mr. Andrepont and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number 7, consideration of approving the minutes of the regular
Move on
meeting
7.
of the police jury dated August
Second.
24th, 2017. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Abshire. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number 8, consideration of ratifying the
Move on
following
8, all
actions
bullets.
taken by
Second.
President Guidry as a result of Hurricane Harvey. I have a motion by Mr. Farnham and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? And I have 2 bullets on that. Let me read those into the record, please. A, Executive Order 2017-07 to revoke Executive Order 2017-05. B, Executive Order 2017-08 to revoke Executive Order 2017-06. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number 9, consideration of adopting a resolution requesting a meeting
Move on 9.
to discuss concerns related to the spillway
Second.
gate guidelines and specifically the relations between the guidelines and the recent flooding events along the Sabine River. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Barris, but we do have discussion. Mr. Barris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate staff for rounding up the proper information for this resolution, because I know that, to me, it sends a message to our constituents here in Calcasieu Parish that were affected not only by the hurricane, but the subsequent opening of the gates at Toledo Bend, and it's just starting to happen a little more often, and I think it definitely deserves a look in their policy on how they decide to do what they do, be it FERC, SRA, whoever. It definitely, we definitely need to take a look and challenge them to do so. So I appreciate staff for helping us get this together. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. Also have discussion by Mr. Scott.
Yeah, Mr. Beam, I don't know that it would actually do any good, but, the Sabine runs all the way down to Cameron, all the way to the Gulf. Maybe it's an environmental issue they would have with that water flowing that much, or fresh water. So it might be worth at least checking with Cameron and see if they want to be part of this discussions. The more the merrier when you pull these people together, so.
I believe so, and Dane's been handling this, and absolutely, that's the thought, so thank you. The idea is, look, we all have the same questions, the same concerns. Let's find out who we need to talk to and just learn more first, and then second, what, if anything, can be done, or revisit it, if nothing else. And so, thank you for that. We'll follow up.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other discussion? I do have discussion. Mr. Horner.
On that same note, are these same discussions going on in the counties on the Texas side? I know SRA is controlled by both states.
That's correct, Mr. Farnham. So you have SRA Louisiana, SRA Texas. I do not know for certain if they're having those meetings, but during this process of scheduling these meetings, I will check.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Horner. Any other discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number 10, take appropriate actions on bids received by the parish purchasing agent
Second.
for the sale of land located at 2925 Industrial Avenue. I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Barris. Let me just read part of the agenda note. Alpha Development Group LLC was the only bidder. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number, I'm sorry, Mr. Scott, I didn't see.
Mr. President, can we go back to 9 just for 1 second?
Yes, we can.
On the, where you're talking about the Texas side, Dane, if you could get with Nedra, we have a Chenier Plain Alliance, and that's our Chenier Plain partners over in Texas. So we already have a working group, a little over a year now. So that alliance would maybe give us a little bit more, we're doing Restore Act things together. So we already have a group of people getting together, from engineers to scientists to politicians to chambers of commerce. And I think the alliance might be that tool to where we could work together to see if we could get something moving they love collaboration. So that we could do Texas-Louisiana collaboration. That might be our foot in the door.
We'll do it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other discussion? All right, we'll go back to item number 11. Consideration of adopting an ordinance rescinding demolition of one house on the property located at 6120 Common Street.
Move on 11.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Moving on to item number 12, take appropriate actions on a request by Richard Daigle to abandon and revoke the original dedication of the west 183 feet of Burrell Road on the southwest corner of Burrell Road and Ogden Road. I had a motion by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Guillory. Let me read the note. The Planning and Zoning Board met and voted 1 for and 8 against to recommend that the request be denied. Is there any other discussion? Any objection?
Mr. President, I don't know if the applicant's here. May not have filled out a blue card.
Is there anyone on item number 12 that's in the audience that would like to speak on it?
For the applicant.
For the applicant?
Thank you,
Seeing none?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Gabb. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 13, take appropriate actions on a request by MAD Contracting LLC to amend stipulations that the development must adhere to the site plan to allow a revised site plan at 360 North Perkins Ferry Road. The Planning and Zoning Board met and voted 6-4 and 4 against to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations.
Make a motion to discuss.
I have a motion by Mr. Landry to discuss and a second by Vice President Brain. We now will discuss. We have a speaker. Yes, with Mr. Joe.
No, he's not that. Just ask.
Bad contract.
Is the applicant here, is the contractor here on item number 13? Is the applicant here?
Hey,
On the opposition, do you want me to speak?
nope.
No, we need the applicant. Please state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Robert Miller, 3239 Watts Road. So there's two that we're voting on, or that was voted on Tuesday night. And this first one is just basically that when I got it passed, the three duplexes, that we adhere to the site plan. So now that I'm proposing to add another duplex, we're just saying that I have to actually have another site plan and say, hey, we're going to adhere to this site plan as well. So that's what this one is about. So, and I had, we had one opposition a Tuesday night as well. But like I explained it to the board, and they agreed with me. What happened is last time it was 3-bedroom units. So that's basically 18 bedrooms. Now I want to go to 2 bedrooms and add another one in there. And so the whole reason I even went to do this was I want a manager there. My father's going to do it at first as long as he can, as long as he's alive. And so one of the original questions or oppositions was the road is a little narrow. I know that it's probably a 30 or 40-foot road. And so it has a little S-curve. And so a year ago, whenever we went before that, they were complaining that someone was mowing the grass and parking half on the ground and half on the road, and people had to go around it, and it was traffic. And so since that particular day, no one's ever parked on the road again. I mow the grass, go over there, park in the middle of the driveway, mow it, no problem. So now with the manager, there will be no one driving over there. The actual lawnmower will be in a shop behind the duplex. My father will mow the grass. He'll be there for any questions, any concerns, things like that. So the way it is now, there will be no manager. I'm trying to get it where we'll have somebody for the people to actually talk to. Because if I'm going to have 3-bedroom units, the rental rate's up there. I can't afford to have someone as a manager, a single person in there at a reduced rate when I only have 6 units. So I would like to be able to do it. And like I was saying last time, everything besides the number of buildings is going down. We had 18 bedrooms approved last time. Now it'll be 16 bedrooms. That's less people. It's just like with the sewer. Whenever they had to go before the sewer, they ask you how many bedrooms. Bedrooms makes a difference on how many people can be there. And so actually we're going down in that regard. And then the actual square footage of the affected area is down. So those 3 buildings were 7,800 square feet. These 4 buildings are 7,200. So we're going down. There's going to be less people. And one of the buildings is going to have a single person in there who is the manager. That's what I'm trying to do.
We have a few jurors that have some questions. Mr. Andrew Point.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I appreciate you have units there now?
No, there's a house there now.
The house there now?
Yeah.
And there's no permanent custodian as we speak there?
No.
And if you put these apartments there, there will be a custodian 24 hours a day?
Well, I'll say 24 hours.
Well,
he'll be living there, and he'll be there. So, with right now, if you're renting, which everybody that I've rented to is single mothers.
Well, 24 hours a day was a bad
Yeah.
choice of words. I'm not anywhere 24 hours a day. So.
Either.
Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is you will have somebody there to overlook, make sure things are running smooth and that kind of thing.
Yes, that's the whole reason we're doing it, because I can't be there all the time. I live in Moss Bluff. I mow the grass, but I can't be there all the time. So someone will be there, and when you rent to someone and you fill out the application and all those processes, they say, hey, it's going to be a
Been there,
single
done
mother.
that too?
Yeah, you know how it is.
Yeah.
And so now I have somebody living there who's going to be there, and if they see other people, hey, then I have to put that up for them and get them evicted. And keeping up the trash and keeping up the trash cans. I know one guy was saying, hey, whenever they come and put the trash can, he was complaining that the trash can was halfway in the road. Hey, look, that happens everywhere. But we'll have somebody there to pick it up.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate you answering my question, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Crane?
Yes, sir.
I may have a question for the applicant, but Mr. Crane?
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure I understand. He has come before us recently and got approval to put how many units again?
18.
Three duplexes.
3 duplexes.
Now he's adding another duplex.
But then he's cutting down on the number of bedrooms, square
Right.
footage is going down, all that. I heard that
Correct.
story. Okay. How long ago was that?
Let's see, it was, was it June?
It was in June? Okay.
June 16th, I think it was.
Yeah, June 6th.
I don't remember. Did you? Oh, it was last year? Okay. Well, no wonder I don't remember. All right. So we approved it, and y'all recommended approval?
Yes, sir.
At that time?
Yes, sir.
And what's your recommendation tonight?
To approve.
I mean, he can already do it. I mean, he doesn't even have to be here tonight. He can already build the same thing because it's already approved. I mean, obviously, he wants to change and do something a little different that he's
Right,
in a
he
different
got
price
approved for
point, but-
3, and the reason we're here is because he requested to change the site plan.
Change site plan, but,
So,
I mean, it's all about land
and
use.
we looked at.
And we've already approved it once.
Well, we looked at the densities, you know, where we've approved other similar type developments in that corridor right there, and the densities are very similar.
Okay. So what happened in the last year? I mean, you just hadn't gotten around to start the project, or I guess?
Yeah, just haven't gotten around
At some point,
to it.
you changed your mind and realized you needed to make some adjustments?
No, yeah, so what happened is whenever, I'm a contractor, I build homes, so I don't have a whole lot of duplexes. This will be my first set. So I've talked to all the people in Moss Bluff that have them. And so doing that, but the real reason I haven't started is because I had to get $750,000. So that's not easy to come by,
No,
to be able to build this project. So now we're getting ready, we're up in, it takes a year. These things happen. It's a lot of money, and I'm a contractor. I'm not a wealthy person, but I'm going to invest $100,000 of my money plus the bank's money. And this is going to be mine. This is not, I'm not building this for someone else. This is my property, and we're going to take care of it. So, that's what happened,
Okay.
as far as that.
That's fine. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Scott?
Mr. Crane.
Yes, sir.
What was the heartache with the 6-4?
I'm sorry?
6-4 was the vote for this. Why
6
does-
was for,
6
4 against.
was, yeah, at the planning and zoning, correct? 6 of them
That's
were,
correct.
or 4, and 4 were against it. Can you give me why were they, I mean, what was the big hang-up that night? I mean, that's pretty close. One vote would have sent it to a tie. I'm just
Well,
curious.
well, there was some opposition that, and I think there is some tonight.
Okay.
So I think you probably be
All
able
right.
to hear their
Second
comments
question,
tonight.
I guess, for the homeowner, and then Mr. Gabb might want to chime in. You've mentioned the fact that, you're going to have a manager on site. Well, say you do next month or next year, all of a sudden have to sell. Can we put in a stipulation? He's agreed to have a manager on site on this property. Can that go in as a stipulation that regardless if he sells it or not, there will be a manager on site there?
Fine with me.
Which one first?
Well, I'm asking you because if he sells it next month because the bank wants all their money back or whatever, or he now wants to make a lot of money, I mean, it's land use, it's not people, so.
Well, Mr. Scott, you can add stipulations. Then it becomes a question of who's going to enforce those stipulations, how do you enforce them? It gets pretty tough at that point. I understand what you're saying. Yes, the plan right now is maybe to have somebody there for 2 years, and what happens after that? To answer your question, you can add stipulations. I worry that those are going to be enforceable, and who will enforce those later on.
Well, Mr. Crane would tell you that everything is complaint-driven. So if somebody makes a complaint, we would have to go out there and check into it. Am I right, Mr. Crane?
We do take complaints, yes.
So, all right, thank you, Mr. President.
And we investigate them.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I'll go back to Mr. Landry.
I hope he doesn't make that as a motion, but
No, I didn't.
I've been here over 18 years. We have never told someone that they had to have an on-site manager. I mean, it's not even an apartment complex, it's a duplex.
right now.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way, we can't do that.
Any other questions? Thank you. We'll be coming right back to you in just a minute, okay? At this time, I would ask for Mr. Joe Morrissey. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, sir.
Joe Morrissey, 406 Marcus Drive, Lake Charles, Louisiana. Good evening, gentlemen, ladies. So, in response to Mr. Miller's rebuttal of the last opposition, the one guy that came had a letter of opposition signed by over 36 of the residents on that street. It was almost everybody on the street. Some of those folks didn't understand the protocol during the first hearing, and we didn't have good representation. So I sent the letter to Amanda Butler with all the signatures, and I think he brought that letter with him as well to that zoning hearing last time. So that is a small piece of land, and I understand square footage is square footage. But when you're talking that many units, you're talking possibly 16 cars. Okay, and any overfill from that, I'm not sure what provisions he's making for parking. So if you got 8 units, 2 bedrooms, potentially, if it's a man and a woman, they're going to each have a car. So now you got 16 cars all coming out on that one corner. And I don't have to tell you, that is a very, very busy corner. The road currently faces North Perkins. As I understand it, he wants to now face the road to Yvonne Street, right at the end where you egress onto North Perkins. So there's a lot of concern with folks about congestion. Right now, as it stands, when you do turn off of North Perkins onto Yvonne, you're battling trash cans. And I know he said he's going to have his manager, but I don't think his manager is going to be out there at 4 in the morning when they pick the trash up and lay the trash cans back down there all over the road. A lot of concerns about that. Yeah, and so, but basically that's it. You know, I just want you folks to know there's a lot of opposition. The one gentleman here, again, I'll repeat, had a letter of over 36 signatures of people on that road. It's almost unanimous. So I won't waste any more of your time, but again, I just wanted to articulate that. We didn't do as good as we should have last time during the original hearing. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Mr. Joe. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak against this item? Just didn't want to miss anyone. All right.
Do you have any other speakers?
There's no other speakers.
I would make a motion to uphold planning and zoning.
We have a motion by Mr. Landry. We have discussion by Mr. Ford.
Yeah, they can go ahead and make the motion and everything.
I second the motion.
Okay, I have a second by Mr. Andrew Point. Go ahead, Mr. Ford.
I guess just an idea, food for thought is I don't know how the trash can, there's nobody that lives there now. There's one house. And the trash cans are a problem with one house. Not sure how that factors in. Maybe just for food for thought is that maybe instead of putting 16 trash cans out to the road, that we make a requirement that they do an on-site dumpster pickup or something to keep that traffic off of the road, because 16 cans at the road might be a little hard to deal with. Just some food for thought. I don't know.
Let's see what Mr. Crane is bound to have some.
Be 8.
They would have to anyway. May have to.
Oh, yeah, that wouldn't be 16 cans, it'd be eight cans.
Mr.
16
West,
cars.
would you like to shed some light on this for us, please?
I mean,
Mr. Crane?
does that look like it'd be an issue to have 8 trash cans all piled up next to the road all together? Is that similar in nature to the way everybody else does it?
I think in duplex developments, it's common to have individual cans. That's why we were discussing it with Alan a little bit. We just don't know what the policy is for, with our contract, waste provider contract. We'd have to check to see.
I don't know. Sounds like it's not a typical way of doing things is to require a dumpster on site versus the cans. And
Apartment complexes, you can require it, an apartment complex, but I'm not real sure about a duplex.
I'm just kicking it around in my head, so I'm good, thank you.
Okay. I'll go to Mr. Scott.
I would like you to look into that for in the future. Maybe and I'd like the applicant to come up and tell us, could even fit a commercial dumpster on the property along with that? I mean, I'm just curious if you don't mind bringing him up, Mr. President?
Yes.
See if it would.
Yes, that's an easy fix. The way it's going to be designed, and just for his rebuttal, I did not want, it was not my design to come out on Yvonne. That is a parish thing. That's not my idea. So I guess because North Perkins is so busy, and that's just something that the parish requires. So I just wanted to know, I didn't come up with that idea.
Would you be willing to put a commercial dumpster behind fences
Probably a
and all
lot
that?
cheaper. Yeah, that's no problem. So
Just
when
solve
they
that
come
problem.
in, there's going to be everything's going to be fenced in. The whole property's going to be fenced in. I could put it at the very in between them, right in the middle. I don't, I hope he doesn't think that I mean, I love Moss Bluff. I love this community. This is going to be mine. I'm going to own this.
I wanna,
I'm going to have I don't want it to be an eyesore. It's going to be one of the nicest. And look, from where I'm at, in a half mile, there's 3 other complexes just like this. So it's not like it's a new thing here. So there's nothing new. It's the same thing. But the ones that are on North Perkins, they're all come on North Perkins now. And so their trash cans are actually on this major road. So the reason I think this is one trash can we're talking about that's probably been in the road a few times. I'm not going to say it hasn't, but it's you know, if I see it, I pick it up. I mean, we're talking about 1 day a week. It only comes on Wednesdays. It's not a major issue, but I understand when you live there for 30, 40 years, you want it to be just like you had it 30 years ago. You don't want that kind of stuff. I understand that, and it is a little narrow road, and there's a lot of roads in Moss Bluff that are not, let's say, the new requirement. You know, it's 60 foot now. They're not the and it's got a little S curve to it, so it is a little traffic. I understand that, but I will tell you this: I went there this morning at 6:30, not a single car. I went yesterday because that was one of his things. I went at 7:40, and I went down all the way down, went all the way through Sistrum. Not a single car at 7:40.
All right. Solving one problem, you can make another problem, and I've already had this problem. So all of a sudden, this commercial dumpster is being dumped at 5 o'clock in the morning, and now Mr. White's getting the complaint. So if you're going to make a stipulation to allow, I don't know if he's just going to put it in yet. He would, if you decide to do this, if you work this out with Mr. Crane or however, I don't know if they're going to make this stipulation, but you need to make sure that provider knows after 8 a.m., you know, if not, if not, call Mr. White.
Right.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Scott.
Mr. President.
I'll go back to Mr. Crane at this point. Mr. Crane.
I just want to make it clear, I'm not making it as a stipulation.
No, we're not.
So
Right.
it's up to y'all to do
Right.
that.
Right.
But I would request, if you do that, to have it screened too.
Yeah.
He's agreed to it.
He's agreed to it, so we're going to get it all worked out. I had a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Andrepont.
That was just to discuss.
If y'all want that, you need, now's the time to do it. You don't work that out later. I mean, if y'all want that, make a stipulation.
He said he's not.
I'm not voting for a stipulation like
I'm not making the motion.
What, Floor, one more.
Go ahead, Mr.
Are you
Scott.
going to be putting in a commercial dumpster?
Yes.
With the screen fences,
Yes,
make it look
that's-
nice,
that's-
upkeep?
I don't want to, and who wants to be an enemy with the neighbors? I don't.
All right, just make
I-
sure your provider's going to pick it up after
Yeah.
8 a.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Landry.
I'm okay.
You-
Well, I mean, I can do it now. I can do it.
Go ahead.
I was just going, if this item passes, I would ask that Mr. Connor get his, Mr. Bruhard, the traffic engineer, to go out to that area. I don't know if there's currently no parking signs in the street, but it sounds like there should be, and we may be proactive and do that ahead of time before he
Yeah, I don't think.
builds there. I mean, because obviously, I mean, once people move in, and they have a visitor over, and you end up with 5 or 6 cars on the road, I think that's going to be a problem, from what I've heard.
I would say this, though, I'd like to mention that, like I said, all I do is drive around Moss Bluff and I build houses. And I have friends that all have duplexes, and you never see a parking, I have never seen a parking issue with the duplex. You don't even see kids outside
So if we
playing.
put the sign, then
Yeah, I understand
it's in
that.
place, and then we know we won't have that problem, and we'll call the sheriff's department.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Forner.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to what Dennis said, but one thing causes another problem. Those neighbors that are complaining about the other thing may want to park their cars on the road.
Well,
So I think we could take this up at another time, because you have to do it through an ordinance that
He's just
restricts stuff.
going to go check it out.
That's
all
it.
he's doing.
That's all.
That's
We had
all
a
I'm
motion
saying.
by Mr. Landry and a
It's a
second by
double-edged
Mr.
sword.
Andrepont. Any discussion?
I
Any
called a
objection?
question.
I call for question.
roll call.
Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
We're voting to uphold planning and zoning.
It's gonna pass.
Mr. Abshire? This is to uphold the planning and zoning.
Vote yes to uphold.
Mr. Andrepont?
Yes to uphold.
Mr. Beers?
Yes to uphold?
Mr. Green?
Yes. I cannot hear.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farnum?
Yes.
Mr. Guillory?
Yes.
Mr. Landry?
Yes.
Mr. Latour?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Trimmie?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Moving on to item number 14. Take appropriate action on a request by Ricardo Costello for general commercial to agriculture to allow residential development in the 2,000
Move to
block of
uphold.
Horseman Road in
Second.
Ward 7. The Planning and Zoning Board met and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted. I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Andrew. Any discussion?
One question.
We do have a question. Mr. Scott?
Why is it going to agriculture if they're going to be building homes on it? Why ain't it going to R1 or R2? I mean, it says to go from C2 to A1.
Yeah, I think he just wants to keep big lots.
Okay, so it's the lot size.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other discussion? Any objection? That item will carry. Item number 15, take appropriate action on a request by Danny Hollowell to rezone from mixed residential to
Second.
recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational park at 2932 Renee Street in Ward 3. I had a motion by Mr. Collins to uphold planning and zoning and a second by Mr. Porter.
There won't be no stipulation. You don't hold it against.
Any discussion? Any
That's for the
objection?
applicant.
Wait just a minute.
Is there someone here to speak on that item?
We need to have.
Okay, Mr. Vice.
Yes.
Is the applicant here? Would you please come forth, sir? Please state your name and address for the record. Come on, Big Daddy. Help him out.
Danny Hollowell, 740 North U-Ball, Lake Charles, or Moss Bluff. Kind of at your mercy tonight. Got shot down on the zoning. I got 2 yeses, which, that, to me, I looked at it kind of, that's at least 2. But just hear me out. I mean, it's all I can do. I wasn't I didn't know that we had any other oppositions or any other complaints. We didn't have nobody show up to speak against me rezoning this property. But I just, what I'm doing here, I guess there may be a misunderstanding. I'm not looking to, industrialize, the location. I got a mobile home that's already on site, and I would like to, just add the 4 RV spots, mainly private use, friends, family, and for, I got friends who want to come in to work or whatever. I have a place, or, Dad, we're flooded out on Goss Ferry Road. We also have a camp, family has a camp out there. So it's just something that, that I can use. It's, I mean, if a park is what, major park is what I wanted, I would have went for 20 spaces on the 2 acres and able to do this. I mean, this is my first go-around to address this kind of stuff, but so I'm learning a lot. But if one reason, what I heard, they said it didn't fit the location, and which I agree to disagree, because in this subdivision, or small subdivision, I mean, it's very mixed up with houses, mobile homes, and in some cases, some rundown and not so great stuff. A couple of abandoned houses, a couple of abandoned mobile homes, RVs, parked here. Old FEMA house, and next to it's got an RV camper. I mean, it could use some attention, but I'm not aware of any neighbors complaining about, whatever I was doing. I haven't really got out and campaigned it. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. The property in questions, Roland Granger, which is my wife's, deceased, but grandfather. I mean, and he's had the property since the early or mid-1950s. And he's the one that also opened up Granger's. Here's some photos of, now that's actually, that property right there is diagonal from my driveway. And that has a mobile home, yes, that has, I think, a camper, it looks like a FEMA camper, and also a little camper next to it with, a little bit of debris in the yard. That's also another shot, side shot of that yard. That's around the corner in another location, kind of facing Luke Powers Road. Not naming names or addresses here. That's actually the location off the main road next to which the property next to me, connected to me, owned by the parish, the police jury. That's the neighbor, which on each side of his house, there's an RV hooked up. Anyway, that's about 2-3 houses down before my driveway. That's on the way to the driveway. That's an abandoned trailer. The roof looked like a tree had fell on it at one time. The RV's been there since I can remember. That's also about, within couple hundred feet from the driveway. That's actually about 20 feet from my driveway, looking to the backyard of this residence. I don't know what that is behind there. This is standing on the road looking at my property where I have the mobile home sitting. That's actually the police jury or the parish's property that I'm shooting the picture across. That's about 20 foot from my driveway looking across the road with this abandoned house, couch and mattress and 3 foot of grass. That house there is actually would be my front yard. That's the property line to my neighbor. That again is
Got
my.
about 1 minute, if you can
Go ahead.
finish up. Got about 1 minute, you can finish up.
Okay. This right here is also my driveway. Where the mobile home is sitting here, that is all you will see after I do where I plan to set everything. I will not be changing the view of anything on this property. From the roadside. That is a house on the next street, which this is one of my favorite pictures. I don't know what that is, a RV or a house or a combination, but so that was, I've just kind of agreed to disagree with the decision and any improvements that I make, and I will take, if there's any amendments that I can do to that I could get your vote tonight, I'd be, whatever, fence, screening, like I said, most of this is just for my personal and my family use. And, I'm not a rich man by far, and, I work 12, 14 hours a day, just about every day of the week, just support. I got 3 babies at home trying to do this.
All right, we do have some jurors that have a few questions. Mr. Barris.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Crane?
Yes, sir.
Looks like there was some funny stuff happening around there, so I'm sure you guys are all aware, and they're gonna get a Christmas card here soon.
Sir.
Let's hope so.
Well, because that's.
Mr. Holloman mentioned that to us, and so we immediately, our code enforcement folks had them go out there and do a sweep of the area.
Right.
And so I haven't heard back from them to kind of see what the investigation entailed, but we are obviously looking out there. And like Mr. Scott said, we do act on complaints, and so that was a complaint.
Thank you. And look, just because it's all around there already, well, that doesn't mean that, we're just going to keep doing it like that. We're going to go and, now that this you came up with this, a lot of those folks they're going to have to change what they got. So just know that.
Well, and what I'm putting up, a fence, and it's going to be nice. And it's somewhere where the family can go. They can come in. We can, I host a ski club competition about every 2 years. My guys come in from Texas. We don't have the facility to hook up on Goss Ferry Road, for anything like that. So, it's something I can use. 5 years from now, when all these RV parks are just nothing but plumbing and wire in the ground, I'm still using mine. And there's no way around rezoning, because if you have one RV hooked up, you have, I mean, the way the rules state, I mean, you have, it has to be zoned as a RV park, which I'm okay with that, you know. If, you know, whatever, like I said, whatever I have to do, whatever would like to be done to make everybody happy, that's, you know, I'm willing to do it.
I yield back, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ferris. All right, Mr. Hollingsworth, we'll call you back if we need you.
Thank
in just
you,
a
sir.
minute.
And
We
thank y'all
now
for-
have Mr. Clifford Temple, who's speaking in opposition of the,
Mr. President, how many,
just one.
thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Good evening, jurors. My name is Clifford Temple, and I reside at 2936 Renee Street. One of the pictures that you're seeing with the vehicles parked up against the fence is my property adjoining to Mr. Hollowell's property. Mr. Hollowell started doing this without parish approval, without permits. I was inquiring because the RVs were pulling up like one every other day, and I'm like, well, what's going on? And I called to the permit office to inquire what was going on. Mr. Hollowell applied for an uninhabited dwelling permit, which the lady explained to me is only for a storage building, electric for a storage building. Well, after the parish come out and inspected what he was doing, they gave him a violation. 2 or 3 weeks later, they came back, he had then hooked it all back up, gave him another violation. Okay, now as these trailers came in, the traffic, he said to the people here Tuesday that he was not charging rent. Well, one of these trailers had 7 people living in them. And by my back door, all I hear is doors slamming all night, you know. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and they're all gone by then, but to have that many people in one Liberty RV, he has another couple, which he says is his kin people in the other one. But you already hooked all this up illegally. Good thing nothing caught a fire, you know. And if you're gonna put something in the neighborhood like this, let the neighborhood know. One of my neighbors is here in the back in the wheelchair. He's opposing it too, as well as the neighbor that lives next door to me. There are people that in the neighborhood own recreational vehicles, and not all of them are hooked up to, you know, electrical. They move them. These are gonna be sitting there, just like the 2 that's still there right now. And the more you come, the more cars gonna come. This is an old retirement neighborhood. I think I'm maybe the second youngest in the neighborhood. All these people, we had one break-in here, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. My wife accidentally left her car unlocked. The neighbor down the street had his car. They went through and they rummaged all through the car, and we had a checkbook in there, so we had to cancel that because we didn't know if they took checks or not. But all this is occurring. When I first moved in this neighborhood 5 years ago, it was real quiet. It still is real quiet, and we want to keep it that way. You know, this is where people are retired to, is you don't hear city traffic. It's in the end of a road in a curve, and it's hardly no traffic. If there's a car passed down the road, we know who it is because we all neighbors, you know. And just from what we're getting right now, if you add 3 or 4 more, it's only gonna get worse.
Thank you, Mr. Temple.
Thank you.
We do have one more speaker. Mr. Kenneth Brunette, if you'd come forward, please. Or Bruno, I'm not sure. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Landry.
Mr. Crane,
Yes,
is
sir.
it true that this is an after-the-fact?
That is correct.
Yes, that's what we need.
Thank you.
Get the microphone.
Could you adjust that for me, Mr.?
And Mr. President, with your permission, 3 minutes per speaker tonight?
Yes, sir.
Thank
Thank you.
Can you hear it? Get closer. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Kenneth Burnett, 3024 Nana Street. Nana Street is connected to Renee Street at the corner on the curve. My opposition to this is if this jury allows a RV park in this area, we have other empty lots on Renee Street. One is directly behind my house. And I'm afraid that if y'all put an RV park there, that the other empty lots are going to want to put RV parks there. We don't want RV parks in a small neighborhood like that. It doesn't make any sense. If one person has it, then the other one's going to have it, the other one's going to have it. There's an empty lot right across from his driveway that could hold probably 6 or 8 RVs. So my opposition is, if you allow one, you might as well allow the others. It's going to ruin the neighborhood. That's why I'm opposing it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Call for question.
All right. Madam Secretary, can we do a roll call vote on this item?
Repeat the.
I'll just, okay, the planning and zoning board met and voted.
Mr. President, I think there's one more speaker, maybe.
Okay. All righty.
We have a, Mr. President, just a procedural matter.
I've already called for question.
Call the question. Was it seconded? I don't know if we had a second on that.
Second, just guess.
Of course I had. I hope I
Mr.
had.
Williams, second. Yeah, we had a second.
Yeah, there you go, Mr.
We had a
Anderson.
second on
So,
it.
Mr. President, we can vote on the motion to call the question first, and then if that passes, or that, then we'll take the motion, the original motion to uphold.
Okay.
So the first vote would be to call the question.
Okay.
So those in favor to call the question now and debate.
All right. I had a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Vice President Guy Brain. Any discussion? Any objection? All right, Madam Secretary? Motion carries.
Motion carries. And now we'll take the motion to uphold.
Which is to deny the request, and this will be a reverse roll call.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sam.
Mrs. Trimming,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Latour,
Yes.
Mr. Landry,
Yes.
Mr. Guillory,
Yes.
Mr. Farnum,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Brame,
Yes.
Mr. Barris,
Yes.
Mr. Andrepont,
Yes.
and Mr. Abshire.
Yes.
The vote was unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Motion carries.
Agreed on something.
Item number 16, take appropriate action on a request by Mr. Wendell Thibodeau to rezone from agriculture to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle
Move to
at
overturn planning and
3132
zoning.
Highway 108 West in Ward 4. The Planning and Zoning Board met and voted 6-4 and 4 against to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. I had a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Vice President Brame.
To overturn, right, guys? To overturn.
Is there any discussion? Any objection? We do have some speakers on this item.
How many?
And legal counsel, Mr. Gabb, we have about 6 speakers on this item, so if you would, please allow 2 minutes.
That'd be fine.
You got
We have 8 speakers.
We'll definitely do 2 minutes.
2 minutes it will be. My first speaker is the applicant.
Where's that?
It's the applicant here tonight. Is the applicant here? Please come forward, sir. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Wendell Thibodeau. I live at 3132 Highway 108 West. Just trying to do RV park for some good guys that come in here to build a plant. And I work at Building and Bar as a body technician. I work on a lot of these guys' trucks and get to know these people, ask them where they're from, what they're looking for. Most of them always say they're looking for a nice, quiet place to stay. And they've been complaining about all the RV parks that they have. They're like, he said, we might as well just park in a dang Walmart parking lot. He said it's just busy, nonstop, buses coming in and out. And so that got me thinking. I said, well, I've got 12 acres here that no one even knows I'm back there. So why not go ahead and provide a nice place for people to come and work. And most of these workers, I've got a good friend of mine that's been in the RV park business for about 20 years, and he's got me connections with all the CBNI, Turner, performance guys, these superintendents that basically do all the drug testing on these people, and I know that's a big concern with a lot of people. I don't want a bad reputation for the neighborhood, and I understand all these people's concerns because it's my concerns. I want to have a nice, clean RV park that can provide a good place, quiet, out in the country. I mean, I've got a pond full of stock full of fish. I mean, so what would be better? Get off of work, come home, you know you're in a safe place. It's not like a Walmart parking lot. There's not a lot of traffic. I'm going to live on this premises, so it's my home. So I don't want a bad group of guys on my property because I live here. And I understand these people's concerns, and I feel for it, is because I understand where they're coming from, because there's other RV parks in the area that have bad reps, and I'm not going to be that guy. I mean, I'm going to be on site, and my wife is going to be there all the time, and I have a hand that helps me mow and takes care of the premises, and so that's all I'm trying to do, is just provide a good, safe place for these guys. And most of these guys that are coming here, I mean, they got $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 rigs, pulling a $100,000 motorhome. They don't want to be, you know, around a bunch of riffraff and drug and crackheads and all this stuff. I'm not. I mean, I got a clean record. I don't want that either. And I think that's what a lot of the people in the neighborhood think that I'm trying to do, and I'm not. I mean, I'm not trying to ruin the neighborhood. This is my neighborhood. It's where I live. I mean, it's where I plan on retiring. And, you know, I understand, you know, their concerns. And I've told them, I said, let's meet. I want you to be completely happy with the arrangements. I mean, Mr. Binkenstein had said that, you know, he was worried about people coming over on his property, which I completely, he has a valid argument. You know, I told him, I said, come over, let's stake it out, let's put no trespassing. I mean, when people come into my facility, I'm going to say, you know, look, that belongs to those people, this belongs to those people. You got all the area you got. You got 12 acres to play on over here. And, you know, I know that we need good places to stay, and there's a lot of people that don't like the areas that they're in. And I'm only asking for, I put 20. I don't know how 19 got in the picture, but I put 20 on mine. And it even has that on the zoning board. But anyway, I mean, I could probably go for 60 or 70, but that's not what the environment I want to be in. I want to only do 20 RV parks, or 20 RVs, and that's it. And some people...
Okay, thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Wendell before you sit down? The applicant. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wendell.
Okay.
We'll call you back if we need you. I would like to call up at this time Mr. Charles Binkenstein. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Charles Binkenstein, 6899 Binkenstein Road. I live on my family's property on the immediate east side of the proposed zoning change. I have several concerns. Drainage is the first concern. Most of the property in that area drains from the west through this applicant's southern property border against 108. It has to cross his property and come to my property and then go under 108. It's already a major flood area. Just in the recent weeks, one home west of his property flooded, and another one came very close on the Shoepick Road north of 108. Also, my driveway floods, and I don't know how this is going to affect the drainage in the area. We're very close to Shoepick Bayou, and we're also susceptible to storm surge in that area. Second concern I have for this is security for the neighboring properties, as he brought up. My family's property borders his east side on the entire length of his property. I have good friends whose property borders him on the north side and the west side. We're a remote area. The property on my side is overgrown pasture, farmland. What's to stop these people from just wandering onto our property? We have a big trespassing issue right now, as remote as we are. Security or Sheriff's Department response is very limited. There's no law enforcement in the area. You know, we already have a trespassing and dumping problem on my property because I live on a remote road right next to his. I just don't want to increase that. We're talking about if he gets 20 slots, he's going to possibly have 40 to 60 people moving in this area. Will he make any kind of arrangements for security of this property, fencing? Also, he has a job. He won't be there to monitor this property full time.
Also
Mr.
another-
Stein, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to kind of close it up, okay?
Yes, sir. It's also inconsistent with the characteristics of the area. All these area homes are family-owned, long-term members of the community. And also, it would devalue our properties while increasing his property value. What's to stop him from selling this after it gets rezoned? He would just be taking our value, our property values and profiting from it. And also, as went through the zoning board the other day with a 6-4 vote, it was fairly obvious to me that they weren't fully committed to approving this with a 6-4 vote. I would have thought it would have been a better vote than that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Our next is Ms. Devin Nippers. Please state your name and address for the record, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Devin Nippers. I live on 7052 Shoe Peak Road. We border just west of Mr. Thibodeau's property, and my concern is security. Like he was saying, is he going to have fences? Is he going to have some kind of security line? Because the way our property borders, we have the field and some other people own that part too, and then there's like this slim, narrow strip of woods that are separated. We can literally see his property if we're standing from my house. So my concern is like property value, and how is he going to eliminate people, like he said, just walking in the field. You know, we live in a neighborhood, everyone knows everybody, watches out for everybody's belongings, and if we have a shop, who's to say people can't just walk up and steal that? Now, I know, yes, you can put it in a secure, locked building and stuff like that, but we don't need it out there because it was never a problem. So that's my concern, if people are just going to walk over, you don't know who's there, you know, anything like that. So that's just my biggest issue. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. This time I will call up Ms. Tina Nippers. Please state your name and address for the record, ma'am.
My name is Tina Nippers, 7052 Shoe Peak. That was my daughter. My main concern is the security, the drainage. We have flooding problems out there already. My house was one of the flooding. And Mr. Thibodeau's property, from where ours ends, is exactly 133 feet. So when I look out my backyard, I do not want to see an RV park, RV lighting. I mean, you know, you have to have lighting, you have to have security. There's going to be traffic problems. There's traffic problems out there already concerning the buses that have to route, that have to shuttle the workers, the incoming workers from, you know, out of state. And I understand that the people have to have a place to stay. And they may have $100,000 travel trailers. But they're here to work. They're not here to live. You know, who's to say he's not, he don't sell this RV place? And who's, you know, and it gets junked up. You know, what's left in our neighborhood? What's left for our property value? You know? And I mean, it's just raising a family and being in our neighborhood is quiet now. Would you guys want to look out your back door with your family and see an RV park? See lights lit up everywhere? Have your kids, you know, play in your backyard concerning people coming in? You know, I mean, that's kind of scary to me. It really is. Like she said, we watch out for each other. I know is to say that,
I'll give you 30 seconds to close up.
okay, that's just about it, because Mr. Beckenstein just did the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. This time I'll call up Mr. Justin Ellis. Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Justin Ellis, 2731 Madison Broussard Road. if you look at economic development, it is a general improvement in living standard. This will not improve anybody's living standard other than Mr. Wendell's. We have already have a man camp 3 miles from us, and because of this, I live on the dead-end road just north of this. I've had numerous out-of-state cars drive down that road looking for gentlemen clubs, looking for drugs. Stopped to ask me where they could find cocaine. Just midday. I don't want that. There's 11 RV parks already in Sulphur. We do not need 12. There is nothing to be gained from this at all. The zoning board said that there is it's naturally buffered. It is naturally buffered by our houses, our communities. They've already brought up flood zones, and they've already brought up, would you want this next to your house? I have a wife that stays at home with 3 girls. Whenever they rain out, I've got 19 grown men. Idle hands. 300 yards from my house with my 3 girls. Do you want that next to your house? Do you want that next to your grandkids? I don't. That's not why I moved into this community. It's not fair. It's not fair for my girls, and it's not fair for this community. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
You want to speak now, Mr. President?
When the opposition gets through.
Okay, Mr. Henderson. Mr. Todd Broussard, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, sir.
Todd Broussard. I live at 7464 Shoe Peak Road, which is just a few miles down the road. Actually, where this property is located, I was born and raised. Lived my whole life through college, probably 500 to 700 feet away from that property. I could go out the back door. I could look. Even anytime it rained, it would be flooded. We could go out there and play in the water. There was nothing there at that time. Just any development whatsoever will restrict any kind of water flow through that area, all to the west for several miles. So it's already been mentioned about the flooding, the security, and everything else. There's really not a lot I can add that hasn't already been spoke of. I do highly oppose this. It does not belong in our Shoe Peak community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Would Brent Spell please come forward? Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Brent Spell, 7051 Shoe Peak Road. I'm just 335 yards from his property. I have a few things I just want to discuss. I'll go real quick. One, does the landing pond, does it even meet the requirement for an RV park in the first place? I read in your notes here from the action that RV type model types are prohibited. So my question on that is, if it's prohibited, how is he going to even have RVs anyway? Number two, he talked about having 12 acres. Well, half of that 12 acres is now a pond. So does that pond count as 12 acres? And does the pond count to be big enough to have the 20 units that he's asking for? Third, will the floodwaters exceed the elevation of the utility access? Which I know it will because it does on mine. Does he have a plan of building a sewage facility of some type? Where is all this sewage going to go when it gets flooded like it does already, because it just did it a couple weeks back? Where's all this sewage going to go? It's going to go in my water table. It's going to go in my pond. It's going to go in anything around me, my ditches, the whole nine, just like it always does. And what they talked about, the buffer zones. The buffer zones is basically everything growing up around him, and the houses that we live in already around him. I don't think there's quite enough room buffer zone wise according to the ordinance that I read today. And how close will the RVs be put together, and then will they be close to the property line of Mr. Binkenstein? or Miss Tina there. Oh, yeah. You're going to have, he's asking for 20 units. Well, that's, you know, like they said, it could be 40 people. Unfortunately, bad guys don't put tattoos on their heads. So how are we going to know? How is he going to
Close up, we're going to give you 30 minutes,
figure out?
Mr. Bell, to close up. 30 seconds.
Okay.
Been a while.
Good. I can read it all. Then.
Bet I woke everybody up with that statement, huh?
All right. Carlos is going through a lot of changes. Zoning is especially one of them. A lot of it is taking place. Everybody out there knows this. We are trying to adjust. My main concern, again, is the security, as they stated, the safety of my family and neighbors. Many of them, which are older and retired neighbors, they're really against this. They just didn't want to come out for whatever reasons. I can't see any really positives except for him, all of us. It's all a negative. So to me, that should trump his issues with, you know.
All right, Mr. Bell.
You know, what he wants to do.
Thank you, sir. We have some more speakers, and we would ask that on the items that we're discussing, if you can get those cards in before the actual item that's being discussed. For one reason is that we set the time based on the number of applicants that we have speaking. So please, if you have an item that you want to speak on, please get those cards in before we actually start on that item, if you would. We really would appreciate that. Mr. Landry.
I mean, I'll ask legal counsel, I mean, when do you stop taking the car? I mean, the cards were turned in like they were supposed to be. You divided the time, we started discussing, and now here we are once again.
Well, we are, and
honestly, after a while, everybody starts saying the same thing, and I don't want to be rude, but.
And I don't either, Mr. Landry, and you're right. Typically, we ask for, obviously, when we have this many speakers, 10 speakers, we'd like to have maybe one speak for the group to stand up. If they have anything extra to add, that would be great.
Yeah.
But we are getting a little redundant. As far as the timing, as far as turning in blue cards, that's your discretion, Mr. President.
I'll go ahead and go through them, but I just ask that they would respect that, you know, if we have an item that we've started.
And maybe if I could suggest, if they have really just want to say they're opposed to it for the reasons that have already been stated, please come to the podium and do that.
Okay.
And maybe ask, and you can ask any questions they might have, and that may be the way to do it for the rest of them.
I appreciate
it. If there's anything additional to add.
Go ahead, Mr. Toole.
Do we have a site plan or anything we can put up?
Yes, there is. It should be on your tablet.
Okay.
I think the button is showing this.
The next person I'll ask to come up is Ms. Katie Abshire. Please come up, state your name and address for the record, please.
I am Katie Abshire, and I live at 2868 Madison Broussard Road. And to cut it short, everything they have said, I had on my paper to say just a little bit more. I have lived in this community. I'm 71 years old. I live on my grandfather's property, which is very near this. I could walk to this place we're discussing right now. And I'm 71. I could get there in probably 10 minutes if I hurried. And I lived there except for about 3 years of my life. It is home to me and all these other people, and a lot of them that couldn't come because they're not able to come. I didn't get to come Tuesday because my sister had broke her knee, or I would have been here. But what I wanted to, only other thing I wanted to say, in our community, as well, these I've already said, we are a community of loving people. We take care of one another. We may not speak every day, but if we look at it and we see there's a need, we go tend to it for that person. That's just who we are. And not to say anything bad about workers that come. Workers have to have a job. They have to earn a living. Our problem is that people who are passing through, people who are temporary, they don't have the same vision for a community that we do about getting along and building a community and having respect for one another. They're there to make their money and to go back home. And that's okay, except who are you when you go to these camps? We don't really know that. And I've had a few run-ins with out-of-town people, and I try to stay out of their way. I try to stay off the roads when it's time to be off the road because it gets really crowded. I've had people that run up on the side of me and pass me up on the right-hand side. There's not even a road there. I've had a man that backed in road rage, ran into my car and made a hole in front of my car because he was angry. It was one of the workers. Now, is he going to come live by us over there? I don't know. But we get all of this. We get nice people and we get people that are not so nice. So what are they going to be like when they get back to that camp? I don't know.
Please.
I
30
just know
seconds, Ms. Go ahead and wrap it up. 30
we live in a safe community right now, a reasonably safe community. I'm grateful to be there. I do not agree with having this. It is way too close to me and the friends that I love.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
vote against it.
All right. I'd ask would Ms. Wanda Cormier come up, please. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Wanda Cormier. I live at 6934 Shoepick Road, not too far, I'm right by Miss Ruthie. Everything they've said, I agree with. I'm against it. I have children in the neighborhood. I'd rather not have those people there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have no idea.
I have this last
Mary.
opposition that's in, it's Mary, but I can't make out the last name. Is it Stevens?
Stevens.
Stevens. Okay, please state your name and address for the record, Ms.
My
Mary.
name is Mary Stevens. I live at 2881 Spring Gully Road, Sulphur, Louisiana, 70665. And please excuse me for being late. I was at a conference. That's why I turned it in late for my little boy. But my family has 160 acres just immediately south of this proposed area. And we already have a security issue with people trespassing. We have no trespassing signs up. People are always out there on four-wheelers or hunting. And my kids are very active in sports. And they go out there to train, cross-country, soccer. We have 40 acres that's 100% cleared. And it is directly south of this area. We have had people, I live on the end of a dead-end road, Spring Gully Road, which is a little bit south. I've had to go run people off parked at the end of my road on my property in the middle of the night. It is absolutely a security problem for me. And also with all the land that my family owns, I am extremely concerned as to what it's going to do to the value of the land out there. This is not going to benefit us at all. There's only one person that's going to benefit, and that's Mr. Wendell. And I don't dislike him. I mean, I don't dislike him trying to make a dollar, but it shouldn't be at our expense. And possibly at our children's expense, because they're the ones who are going to suffer long-term for this. And I am also concerned about the drainage because that area floods horribly. And again, with the people there, my parents have had things stolen from their house. In front of Mr. Charlie's house, the man in front of Mr. Charlie's house had a trailer and all his things stolen. And we never had a security problem out there. And the sheriff's department, it takes 20, 30 minutes for them to get out there. So it's really a problem. But thank you for your time, and I am absolutely against this for my family.
Thank you,
and
Ms.
everyone in Shoepeak.
We have a few jurors that have some comments. I'll go with you, Mr. Andrew Point.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I address Mr. Crane, I think it is?
Yes, sir.
That is a flood zone, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to oppose this request for my reasons are threefold, if I could explain. First of all, to say that I've been inundated with phone calls is an understatement. And I appreciate that because that's the only way I know how people feel about particular issues. First thing. The flooding, I'm familiar with the area, and I can tell you the flooding there, they're right on target. It is absolutely atrocious. And to put a RV park in a flood zone, in my opinion, is counterproductive. Why do I say that? We are at this time trying to implement a drainage ordinance. That, and I'm sure Mr. Thibodeau is an honorable person. I don't know that it's not about him. It's about the issue of an RV park. We're trying to implement a drainage ordinance. And to me, I'm sounding redundant, but that is counterproductive to what we are trying to do. And I think we listen to these people tonight, and they have valid points, more than one. So my position is I can't support this for those obvious reasons. And with that, Mr. President, I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. Mr. Barris.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, 20 years ago, this might have been all right. You know, you look at it on the little napkin there, it looks, oh, look, a little play area, oh, a pond, and, you know, but unfortunately, the climate of our area has changed drastically. And the old saying, there's always that guy that messes it up for the rest of the class. That's the guys wearing the high vis and speeding, and you know what I'm talking about. Everybody that lives out by me knows what I'm talking about, you know. So another day, another time, you know, heck, might have been a good idea, but you know, not now, not after what we've seen, not after the history, you know, the experiences we've had, and you know, yeah, it'd be great, man, if I could find 10, 20 Rhodes Scholars to come live in my front yard, man, and I just, man, well, but, you can't pick that. You can't exactly ask that on the application to live there. So, I concur with all the stuff that you guys have brought to the table, and that's why I will oppose it as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Was there any other discussion by the jurors? Well, the motion on the floor was Mr. Judd Barris to overturn planning and zoning, and he had a second by Vice President Guy Brame. Is there,
Mr. President, you want to offer 90 seconds to the applicant to come
Okay.
back up.
Mr. Wendell, would you please come forth and give a rebuttal, sir?
I just suggested 90 seconds, if that's okay.
I think that's fine, Mr. Gadd.
Let me just say that I prayed about this before I got here, and I texted Mr. Binkenstein about it, and I said it's in God's hands. And as me being your neighbor, I respect you, and I respect everybody here. And after seeing the response that y'all have, I would try to filter out the best that I could possibly filter out people. And I look at my front yard as a paradise, just like y'all look at y'all's property as a paradise.
Mr. Wendell, if you could address us,
Oh,
please,
well,
we would appreciate it.
well, I guess because I feel like they're the
And
ones
that's
that.
honorable on your part, and I can respect it.
But, I understand. I mean, this is their homes. I mean, this is their place, and what y'all decide is what y'all decide. I mean, I'm not going to argue with anything. I had an idea. It would either work or not work. And I have to live by these people. And what y'all decide is what y'all decide. I want to be the good neighbor. Mr. Binkenstein said that he thought I lived there for a couple of years. I've been out there for 10 years. I'm very secluded back there, and I know there's a lot of guys out there that would love to camp on my spot, to be able to go out there and cast a line at the end of the day and relax and not have to deal with some of these other RV parks like they're complaining about, because they're out there. And I mean, you almost need a full-time crew to regulate that. I mean, it's chaos out there right now. And that's why I didn't want to do 60 or anything like that. 20 I could manage, Okay. So it's up to y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Wendell.
All right.
I appreciate it. And I applaud you for your honesty, Mr. Wendell, honestly. You've been outstanding through the whole process. We had a motion by Mr. Barris to overturn planning and zoning, and it was seconded by Mr. Brame. I'm sorry, I keep missing you, Mr. Scott.
I just want to make a statement. I appreciate everyone coming out, and, this is our community. But I don't want it to feel like every RV park we've ever put in this parish is a bad place and bad people. I've got great response from some of these RV parks that have been put in place, and they have literally adopted the school next to them and have done school supply drives. So they're not bad places just because of the stigmas attached to them. So they are places that we need, and I appreciate the ones that are run correctly and that people themselves, individuals, take on the responsibility of being a good neighbor regardless if they're temporary or not. So it's not inherently RV parks are bad places. I do believe this is a bad location, but it's not necessarily a bad place. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other discussion? Any objection? I guess I'll have to have you see. I can't.
Mr. President, there shouldn't be any comments from the audience, and we've had rebuttal. We're kind of done with the argument.
Mr. Wendell, I have to go with legal counsel. Okay? Is there any discussion? Any objection? Motion carry. 17. Item number 17, take appropriate action on a request by Howard Rogers to rezone from agriculture to light commercial to allow
uphold planning
commercial
and zoning.
development at 6880 Big Lake Road in Ward 3. The Planning and Zoning Board met and voted unanimously to recommend that this request be granted with stipulations. I have a motion by Vice President Brame and a second by Mr. Andrew Point. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry.
No action necessary on 18.
No action necessary on item 18. No action required. Item number 19, take appropriate actions on a request by Oak Run LLC to rezone from unzoned to single-family residential to allow single-family residential development in the 1200 block of Manchester Road in Ward 8. The Planning and Zoning Board met and voted 7-4 and 2 against to recommend that the request be granted. I have a motion by Mr. Guillory and a second to uphold and a second by Mr. Latour. We do have some speakers on that item. Is the applicant here? The applicant, please come forward, state their name and address for the record, please.
President, members of the jury, my name is Tom Gale. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. My address is 713 Kirby Street, Lake Charles. This is a zoning request. What's happened, this is an agriculturally zoned piece of property. Matter of fact, this specific parcel is one of the few parcels, if any, in the Calcasieu Parish that has no zoning classification at all. The property surrounding it was originally agricultural. This is where it was literally a flood ditch for a rice field was there. They've gotten, planning and zoning has already approved phase 1 of this development. It is R1, as you know, which is the most restrictive zoning classification that we have in this parish. There are single-family residences across the street, and the parcel that is adjacent to this, which is also owned by Oak Run, which is phase 1, is already been approved by planning and zoning. So this is just a logical extension of phase 2. And unfortunately, planning and zoning turned down the preliminary plat of phase 2, but we'll have to go back and visit that another day in a different context. Right now, specifically zoning, we ask that it be approved and zoned as R1. Any questions?
We do have one. Go ahead, Mr. Barris.
Why was the site plan not kosher?
Well, the Planning and Zoning Board, they denied it. They
Okay.
felt like that they,
So why?
I don't know exactly
Doesn't
why.
tell me a whole lot.
It was technically compliant.
With
It was
all due
technically
respect.
compliant, but the board felt like that they needed to go back to the drawing table and redo it.
Okay. And you said it was a drainage kind of,
It was a irrigation canal. And so at one time, so that's the reason it was never, it didn't have a zoning classification.
okay.
But it's since been filled in. It's
Okay.
It's been filled in.
All right, okay, good deal. We're not trying to build anything in the ditch. Good deal. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Mr. Murray. We have one speaker on this item, with Ms. Joanne Gatlin. For general comments, please come forth and state your name and address for the record. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. President, again, 3 minutes.
3 minutes, Ms. Gatlin.
Good evening. My name is Joanna Nixon Gatlin. I reside at 1425 Manchester Road, Iowa, Louisiana, 70647. I am a member of the Easttown Estate subdivision, which is across the street from this property. This property was not filled in. I watched the people level the dirt on it. It was never filled in. The trees were just collapsed over and bulldozed over. But that's not, we're not against the zoning. What we were against in the subdivision itself, because it was not consistent with our houses. We live on acre lots. Our average houses are 2,100 square feet. He wanted 75 feet wide lots. We could put 2.5 plus of his houses on our 1 acre. So it wasn't consistent. So at this point, we have a nice, quiet neighborhood. We're good citizens and taxpayers, and we just want the same kind of community like we have across the street from us. That's the end of my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Joanne. I have discussion by Mr. Scott.
Mr. Crane, did we do phase 1, Oak Run phase 1 not long ago?
You did.
And is that where we want them to put the driveways
Yes.
behind
Yes, it
everything?
Yes, sir.
So is phase 2 following some of what we required in phase one? Is that what you're kind of going with the new design? I'm assuming?
Well, no, they were proposing to do phase two similar to phase one.
The same way, according to our stipulations?
Correct.
And the planning and zoning didn't like that? They're gonna make them widen them, I guess, or who knows what that's all
I'm
I
not
needed
sure.
to know. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Scott. I had a motion by Mr. Gillett to uphold planning and zoning, and a second by Mr. Latour. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah,
We do have discussion,
mean,
Mr. Landry.
I'm looking, I mean, we are on number 19, are we? It says
We
that
are.
they voted 7 for and 2 against. Recommend that the request be granted, and then 2 of y'all have said that they voted against it. I mean, that's not what I'm reading.
No, this is for the rezoning. They had to rezone the property or actually.
So back, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
There were 2 requests on Tuesday.
I got you, all right.
All right,
Make sure
any
we're
other
all on the
discussion?
same page.
Welcome back.
You are, Mr. Landry. Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number 20. Take appropriate action on a request by Ms. Janet Areno to rezone from agriculture to light industrial to allow light industrial development at 4,000 Areno Road in Ward 4. The Planning and Zoning Board met and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. I had a motion by Mr. Fordham to uphold planning and zoning, and a second by Ms. Trimmy. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number 21, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the purchase of property located at 1605 Ruby Lane, Sulphur, through funding received from the FEMA Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant Program. I have a motion by Mr. Fornum and a second by Mr. Abshire. We do have a speaker on this item, Ms. Areno, Ms. Janet Areno.
That was on 20.
That was 20.
That was on 20.
I don't know what they're on over there, but
It says 21.
Well, that wasn't my vice president's fault. It said 21. I'm going to take up for him.
Thank you.
It wasn't his fault. I'm going to support my vice president. Any discussion? Any objection?
Mr. President, I have a question, not
Go ahead,
about
Mr. Andrew
this,
Point.
but related to this. FEMA.
Go ahead, Mr. Andrew Point.
Mr. Crane,
Yes, sir.
Which one we on?
invariably, I get questioned with people who are flooding
Okay. Still on 21.
about FEMA buying them out. What's the procedure? I mean, I need to be able to give them some kind of a,
Jennifer Cobian in my office, she handles all of our grants.
I mean, how do you determine who goes and
There's
who
some
don't?
criteria, that they have to meet.
3 times.
Yeah, that's Jennifer.
Would you recommend?
Jennifer's here.
Ms. Jennifer, please state your name and position here with the parish, please, ma'am.
Jennifer Cobian, Senior Finance Analyst.
Just make it short, okay?
Email me. We send them a questionnaire to fill out and return back to us, and we review the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the process.
That's the process to get it going. Yes, sir.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Andrew Point. Mr. Landry.
They have to flood 3 times on record.
Three
So not-
times?
In other words, they need flood insurance and they have to flood 3 times. So,
I'm just
I
trying
mean,
to
is that
find
not
something-
correct? I mean, that is correct, isn't
Right.
it?
That is correct.
Yeah, they have to be a repetitive loss.
Right.
Yes.
At that point, it's considered repetitive
Well,
loss and
I
then
just
they
need
qualify.
something to hang my hat on, 'cause I, you know.
Hopefully, when they call you,
I don't
they've
know.
already flooded 3 times, because if they haven't, you're gonna have to tell them they have to flood
Gotta
it
flood it
more.
3 times?
They have to flood more.
Could be
to actually
eligible
get-
within a year.
And Mr. Landry, you're right, they have to have flood insurance.
Okay.
And, right, oh, and they have to have flood insurance.
Okay, well, I yield back. I think I had the floor.
Thank you, Ms.
so
Andrew
I'll
Point.
yield
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Landry. Any other discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number 22,
Move on
consideration of
22.
adopting a resolution authorizing the submittal of a
Second.
grant application to the Governor's Office of the Homeland Security for the 2017 Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant Program. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Item number 23, take appropriate actions on bids received by the parish purchasing agent for 1 ready-mix concrete and crushed stone.
Move on 23.
I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Vice President Brame. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry.
Move to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, we have a point of personal privilege by our parish administrator. Mr. Brian Bean, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. It was a long meeting. I'll have to make tough decisions, so I want to end it with good news. Just this week, the Department of Commerce, U.S. Department of
It's going to
Commerce.
be 1 minute, Mr. Bean. You know I love you, Brian. You know I love you.
You got me on that one. Okay. How much, you got, you
45.
45?
Messed up.
They have their annual list of metro areas. They measure GDP, which is gross domestic product, which is really a good indicator of how your economy's doing. And the Lake Charles Metro, which includes Calcasieu and Cameron, 2016 was the highest GDP growth in the nation for 2016 at 8.1%. So I know there's a lot of challenges with growth, but the good side, just to remind the big picture of, there's a lot of good things happening. And this follows 2015. I believe it was also, Lake Charles Metro was the highest. So just pat on the back to all of you and all the local folks that contribute to that. It's a good reflection on how things are going. We're very fortunate, but a lot of your policies help encourage economic growth, and it's good news. Just want to pass it along. And I think I made my time limit.
Very important, Mr. Bean. Any discussion by the jury?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
To adjourn by Mr. Landry and second by Mr. Harris. We're now adjourned. Great job.